This question really came from me. Is neither an option? Here we go. I told you it would happen. Hello, book reading friends. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Mel, and today I bring you guys a Would You Rather book edition. So for this one, I asked you guys on Instagram to leave me some prompts in a Would You Rather setting for the questions to be very bookish centric. So I'm going to be going through these answers very spontaneously. I have not looked at any of the things that you guys sent in, and I'm going to reply in the most honest way possible in this 1v1 what wins in my eyes. And as always, if you guys want to be a part of these community interaction videos, don't forget to follow me on Instagram. I'll leave it somewhere on the screen. So let me blindly scroll through these and see what we stumble upon. Let's stop here. Let's see. Would you rather never be able to read again or only be able to read your most hated book? My most hated book is a tie, I'd say, between Den of Vipers and Normal People. I would much rather, see, I don't want to read about people getting fucked with a knife, and I would also rather not read about emotionally incapable toxic relationships. I might say never read again. Ooh, wait, I like this one. Would you rather be the villain in a story or the hero? The villain or the hero in a story? So I'm going to channel my inner theater self and say I have always wanted to play the bad guy in a theater setting, in a musical. I think it would be really fun, especially because I find that a lot of villains are not necessarily wholly evil, but rather they're morally gray. And a lot of them, if they're written well, if they're developed well, a lot of them have very clear and honestly at times understandable motive as to why they're doing what they're doing. And I find that maybe a villain, because being a hero is just too much. I mean, being both of them is too much in general, but I feel like this whole Mary Sue, this whole chosen one trope, I love this for the people who handle that, for the people who try and save the world, but I feel like I'd be a really good antagonist in this narrative. Could you imagine like an Elphaba, like a Wanda? Again, morally gray, not necessarily wholly evil, but not wholly good. Also because I feel like a lot of the time the villains have better powers a lot of the time. If it's like a balanced game, like if I get to have a power as cool as the hero, I have no issues being the villain in the story. Would you rather never buy books again or be only allowed to read 30 books a year? 30 books a year, obviously. I don't think anybody would choose never read again. I find that the people who tend to read only 30 books a year tend to have better reading than the people who read 300 books a year, because obviously the conversion rate is a lot better for a lesser number. I have read over 100 books this year. I think I'm nearing the 160 book mark. Most of these books are forgettable. A lot of them had really low ratings. I really disliked a lot of these stories, and I would much rather read 30 solid favorite books, 30 new favorites, rather than read 300 books a year. And that's obviously unbeatable against never reading a book again. I'd much rather 30. Would you rather enemies to lovers or friends to lovers? I think it depends on the setting. If it's a fantasy setting, I would much rather have an enemies to lovers, just because the angst is there, and if it's done really, really well, then you'll have people who are actually from opposing sides of a war, and you'll have a really clear struggle between these two, either following their own doctrines, between following their own people, saving the world or not saving the world, or whatever they need to do, and being with each other. And I find that that tug of war, that really distinct struggle, is something that I gravitate a lot towards in fantasy, so I really like that. But when it comes to romance or contemporary, quite honestly, I would much rather read a friends to lovers, because it's a relationship that's already established, and because the books are much shorter, I find that it's gonna be something that is easier to establish in a romantic setting. It's gonna be something that's easier to develop, and it's something that's probably gonna make a lot more sense than the character meeting somebody that they don't know and then them having this really hateful relationship towards each other, slowly transitioning into love, because most times that doesn't really fulfill anything and it feels very rushed. So in fantasy, enemies to lovers. In contemporary, friends to lovers. And here's where I told you guys I tried and justify both answers. Here we go. I told you it would happen. Would you rather see your favorite book slash series as a movie slash movies or TV show? Is neither an option? Here's the thing. I don't know. I don't know. Adaptations for me are so tricky. There are some adaptations from books that I have loved in the past that I've seen on screen. Absolutely no justice to the original work. And we go back to that saying of the book is always better than the movie or is always better than the TV show. And I don't want any of my favorites to go through that. For example, The Moral Instrument. It's something that has had two very distinct and very famous adaptations, and both of them fucking sucked. And I don't want that for Stormlight. I don't want that for Strange. I don't want that for Addie. I don't want that for what else do I like? For whatever it is that I like, I don't want that to happen. So it's always a really scary thought about putting these works, about putting this source material in creatives' hands, because you never know what they're going to do with it. You never know if they're going to completely stick to it or if they're going to make something completely different, if the visuals are going to be on par with what was on your head as you were reading, or the imagery that the author painted for the book itself. And so it's always really scary to think about adaptations. When I think about really successful visual adaptations, I think about Game of Thrones. I think about Shadow and Bone, which honestly had a really good adaptation in comparison to the books. I have not been able to get through a single Grishaverse book, and it's probably gonna stay like that. When I think about Perks of Being a Wildflower, that was also a really good adaptation. Little Fires Everywhere, I haven't read the book, but the visual adaptation was really nice. I don't know how accurate or not it is. When I look at those examples, it gives me faith in the film industry or in the TV industry that something good could happen. I will say, I don't know. I don't know. So I will say, if you have something like Wicked Fox, K-drama would be out of this world, would be so phenomenal. Not the same thing. K-drama. K-drama's where it's at. I'm scared of giving an answer, so I'll refrain. I'll refrain from giving an answer. Would you rather read a book you know you won't like or end up hating a book you thought you would love? Absolutely read a book I know I won't like. I've done this in the past with Den of Vipers. I knew I wasn't gonna like this book, and what I did was that I made this a whole experience. I read this with some of my booktube friends. We made a whole live stream about it, which is never gonna see the light of day, and we drank while we were reading, and we had snacks while we were reading, and it was really fun. It was a funny time, and it's definitely something that is gonna remain as one of my favorite memories on the internet. I think I would much rather that than end up hating a book that I thought I was gonna love, because it's happened in the past and it's never fun. I think that when you enter a book with expectations, which is something that I tend to do a lot, you tend to hype yourself up so much that you kind of set yourself up for failure. And again, that's never fun. So I would much rather read a book that I know I'm gonna hate, but make a whole experience out of it. Would you rather read a huge series back to back or only be able to read one of the books a year? I have commitment issues with series, so I would much rather read these back to back. You guys know me. I start series and I say I'm gonna binge them, and then I don't. I said that with Scythe. I still have not read the third book. I said that with Mistborn. I am still on the second book. I said that with Stormlight. I'm still on the second book. And so I would much rather be able to binge all of the books and just get it done with, or catch up with the books and let that be done with, instead of reading one of those books sporadically, because at this point, that's exactly what's happening with Scythe. I read the first book last year, read the second one this year. At this rate, I'm gonna read the third one next year. So it's not fun. It's not fun because it feels like an incomplete project, and it's not good. It's not good for my soul. So I'd say binge. Would you rather only be allowed to read fantasy or contemporary for the rest of your life? No doubt about it. Fantasy. You guys know me. I don't tend to read a lot of contemporary unless it's for videos, like very specific video projects. Otherwise, most of my free time is spent reading fantasy. So I would say I would much rather read fantasy books for the rest of my life. Also, that would probably really help out in finishing and starting all of the series, all of the standalones that I actually want to read in the fantasy genre. So that'd be really freaking nice and cool. And I kind of wish that was the reality of things, but unfortunately it's not, because I can't seem to commit to just one thing when it comes to reading. Would you rather physical copy or an ebook? And hands down, it's physical copy for me. I will say it, and I always talk about it with you guys and with friends and family members. There is nothing like just grabbing a book and turning the pages. There's just something about the sound of turning a page. There is nothing like that sound. It will forever be unbeatable. Also, because you guys know me, I like tabbing my books. I like to take notes as I go. I like writing on my books, and I just like to make them my own. There are a lot of books that I've read only as ebooks, and if it's not a stellar book, if it didn't have a really great like plot twist, or if it wasn't necessarily a 5-star, I will absolutely forget that I read that book, and I think that's happened time and time again with me. And so for me, reading physically is a lot more memorable, so I will go with that answer. This question really came from me. Would you rather read about love always but never have one, or have one epic love but never read about it? Give me my epic love. If you tell me the love of my life is gonna walk through that door right now, and the only condition is I never get to read about love again, bring it on. Bring in the love of my life. I will accept it gladly with open arms. I would much rather have that one epic love myself rather than read about 1,000 epic love stories. Give me my own. There is nothing like experiencing things on your own and getting your own happy ending. Where do I sign the contract? I'll do a blood pact. I'll go full ghostwriter. Give me the parchment paper and I'll bleed onto it. Where is it? Would you rather read a book with a boring plot but great characters, or a great plot and boring characters? I would say great plot, boring characters. I will say that. I have read a lot of books that the characters were great, but then the plot was convenient and it was boring and it made no sense. And ultimately those books for me ended up being rated super low. No matter how great your characters are, I don't care if they're funny, I don't care if the romance is fantastic. If none of those things serve the plot and the plot doesn't serve the characters, I don't want it. And so I think I would much rather have boring characters that serve the plot and whose plot serves them. I think that in my eyes stands unbeatable, and there is nothing that can touch that, so I would much rather boring characters but a fantastic plot. Absolutely yes. Would you rather only be able to buy books with broken spines, or never have a book with the new book smell? I don't really smell books, so I don't really care about that. I will say books with broken spines, just because they have a lot of character, they've been through it, they've lived their lives, they've spread love or hate, whichever of the two, and I feel like it has a story, right? So that on the shelves will look really nice, I will say, because I don't be smelling my books like that. Would you rather have an author never finish a series, or be given the rest of the series written badly? I would rather the author never finish the series. There is a lot of fan fiction out there, okay? I can go read my AUs, I can go read anything that could potentially wrap this up in a well enough manner. I can make up scenarios in my head. I'll write myself the ending of the series, of the books. I'll be fine. I can live. I would much rather that. Also, there's a lot of series that I've started and I've read 1 or 2 books and I go, I can just picture the ending. I have no interest in carrying on. Low-key scythe for me right now, but I would much rather that than have a really shitty ending, because those are never fun and it just ruins the experience. It's like, I went through all this for that. This one also came up a lot. Would you rather a hardcover or a paperback softcover? I would say it's like, I love hardcovers. They're just really hard to transport because they're heavy. Why is my brain telling me paperback? I hate this. I feel like I would generally answer hardcovers, clearly, because most of my books are in hardcover. Maybe it's because I'm currently reading Shadow of the Wind and my experience annotating that as a paperback has been really nice, and it's just been like smooth sailing. I love the way that my notes look in that paperback edition. Truth is, hardcovers are obviously a lot easier to annotate. So I'm gonna say hardcover because that's generally what I would answer. I'd say hardcover. Thank you. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Would you rather read a book with a perfect love story, or read a book with a perfect twist at the end? Perfect twist at the end. Absolutely yes. Way of Kings, are you kidding me? That book has 0 romance, and that plot twist will compensate for whatever romance I didn't get. So I would rather, very much so, have the craziest, most twisty plot twist in the universe rather than a good romance. Give me the plot twist. Like, I just want to be reading the book and get to that moment, dramatically gasp, because I'm dramatic when I read, and get up from my chair and just walk around while I have an existential crisis. That is the mood. That is the moment. I swear to God, I'm gonna start beef with Jaleesa. Not her saying, would you rather read Normal People or Webster's Dictionary? As if this is any sort of fair competition. Both are boring as shit, but I would much rather read Webster's Dictionary with all of its definitions rather than Normal People. At least that one will have quotation marks somewhere, something of substance, and will actually educate the people on something. Would you rather purchase only secondhand books or only ebooks? Secondhand books for the win, absolutely. There is nothing wrong with ebooks, it's just my personal preference with how I digest information a little bit better when I read physically. And I would say secondhand books. I thrift books a lot online. I buy a lot of books from the used section as well. So I have no qualms with buying secondhand books. Again, they have personality. A lot of them have also come from like libraries. If you see this one, it literally came from Town out of Ballston Community Library, so I like them. Also, a lot of the time the covers of books that I want are only available through thrifting or again secondhand books, so I'm vibing with that. I have no issues with that. It's also a great way to save the coin. Ooh, I love this, and it goes perfectly with this time of year. Would you rather read outside during summer or inside with a blanket during winter? I do not bode well with the heat. I live in a very hot country, and most of the time I just stay inside and I make up my own ambiance. I light my candle, I take my blanket, I cozy up on the couch, turn off all the lights, just dim them, turn on the AC, and I pretend that I am in a very cold and cool area, and it makes me feel the best when I'm reading. When it's very, very hot, I can barely think as I read, so I would much rather inside with a blanket and the cold rather than outside in summer with the heat. Would you rather be forced to burn the Mistborn series or the Skyward series? What do I want to burn? Let's see, it's such that they're both such different books. It's like Skyward is a sci-fi, it's outer space, and it's action-packed and it's good. And then you've got Mistborn, which is an epic, and it's got a big cast of characters and a really intricate plot, and the magic system is really unique. Am I really gonna burn Spensa? Where even is Spensa? I can't find her. Don't want to answer this. This is so hard. I don't know what to do. They're just so different. Okay, I'll burn Mistborn. I'll burn Mistborn. Is that my final answer? Is that locked in? If I go off frame, will I be able to escape this question? Please say yes. I'm going off frame. Goodbye. Not answering. Goodbye. Would you rather go in the Hunger Games or be stuck in the maze in Maze Runner? I never read Maze Runner. I've only watched the movies when I was younger. I feel like I'd be really good at Hunger Games. Not the murder part. I don't know if I could go that far, but I could hide. I've been hiding for a year. See, this is when I know I am not chaotic, or not as chaotic as you guys think, because this person really said, would you rather rip a page out when you've read it or burn the book when you're done? What sort of evil dystopian world is this? Not one I want to be a part of. I guess rip the page out, because then I can just put it back together or keep it all in a folder. But then if I burn it, the book is just gone. I guess rip the page out because I can keep it. Would you rather someone ruin the ending of a book for you or never finish a book you were reading? I would much rather never finish a book I'm reading. I have definitely been spoiled for one of many things in my lifetime, whether because people said spoilery things in live streams that were not even meant to have spoilers of any kind. I have Googled things and find out characters were dead, so I would much rather not finish a book I'm reading rather than get spoiled, because then that just ruins the whole experience. Would you rather have a short and easy read or a long and interesting one? I would much rather have a long and interesting read. I like short books for the most part, but sometimes short books don't allow enough room for development and for establishment of plot and plot progressions, and sometimes a lot of the things that happen in short books are not necessarily justifiable. And so I would much rather have a longer book that has a nook and space for everything, rather than a book that was seemingly just put together and that's what you get. Like, just read that and settle with that because it's all you got. It's honestly not even a competition for me. Would you rather read only fantasy books with no romance whenever you want, or only one romance book a year? Fantasy books with no romance, absolutely. This is what I typically do anyway. It's like I read fantasy books with or without the romance, and then I read one romance book every once a full moon. And so it just feels like what I do anyways at the moment. So I guess I would much rather just read fantasy books with no romance. Would you rather sprayed edges or stenciled edges? I would much rather sprayed edges, I think, because I like tabbing my books, as you guys would know. And let's say Dune, for example, is a book that has sprayed edges, but it looks like this, and it's got tabs, and it's got post-its, and it's got all the things. So sprayed edges allows me to have pretty edges in a book, but still clearly annotate, whereas stenciled edges, I feel bad for ruining the continuity of the stenciled edge. So I'll say sprayed edges. And so that is it for today, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Community Not Wednesday, just a community-centric video. If you did, don't forget to smash that like button down below and let me know your answers down below. What would you guys say for any of these? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What would be your stance on these answers? Let a girl know down below. If you made it to the very end of the video, let's leave a T emoji down below. I feel like we've done this before, but it's fine. If you reach the end, let's leave a T emoji. Don't forget to subscribe down below if you haven't done so already. I am constantly uploading videos that I am sure you do not want to miss. And if you want to support the channel further, I do have a Patreon. It is always linked down below alongside all of my social medias. And yes, I love you guys so much, and I shall see you on the next one. Bye, guys.